Welcome everyone to the Savvy Sales Lady Live. And today we're going to talk about the hidden signals your prospects are sending and how to respond and what to look for in those signals. I know this is going to give you a piece of the puzzle that you may not have considered when it comes to prospecting. Okay. So have you ever been in a sales conversation where someone is saying yes, is nodding all through your presentation, whether face-to-face or in a Zoom call, and they seem interested, but at the end they say no, and you're going, what happened? And something just felt off about it all? Or maybe you've had that prospect who says, I need to think about it. And you're left wondering, what's that all about? Because the prospect was asking questions and was engaged in the conversation. Why did they say at the end, I need to think about it? Well, today we're talking about these hidden stress signals your prospects are sending you. Signals that are happening right in front of your eyes, but most of us completely miss them. So we're going to decode those moments using insights from expert Chase Hughes. He's a behavioral expert, and I love his work and I follow him. And I'm going to give you practical ways to respond when you spot these signals. So grab your cup of coffee or your beverage of choice, grab your notebook, and let's get into it. And add your questions or comments in the chat area on the live stream, and I'll read them out loud and I'll answer any of your questions right away here live. All right, let's get into it. Okay. The first segment is why this matters and why you need to develop this skill of finding patterns in prospects. So before we dive into specific signals, I want to talk to you about why this matters so much for us as salespeople. And here's the thing. Most sales training focuses on what to say, your pitch, your scripts, your objection handling. And yes, those things are important, but here's what nobody talks about, what you're going to learn today. 7% of communication is only the words spoken. So let me say that again. Only 7% of communication is the actual words being spoken. The rest, it's recognizing patterns of behavior and also noticing tone, body language, facial expressions, and all those little micro signals that our prospects are sending us constantly. Now, Chase Hughes, as I mentioned earlier, who is a behavioral expert and author, talks about something called change detection. Change detection. And this is what we're going to cover during today's podcast. This is what we're going to cover. So what is change detection? It's basically your ability to notice when something shifts in your prospect's behavior. And this skill, well, it's a game changer for you, but you've got to pay attention. Because here's what I've learned. Your prospect's body tells the truth before their mouth does. When someone is feeling stressed, uncertain, or resistant during your sales conversation, their body is going to show you, and you have to be observant. And if you can catch those signals early, you can address the real objection before it becomes a hard no. This isn't about manipulation. This is about a better way to serve your clients by understanding what they need, even when they can't articulate it themselves. So let's talk about what to look for. But before we do that, did you know I have an online community called the Seller's Mind Lab? It's for sales professionals just like you who want to ask questions but can't participate in social media conversations because of company guidelines, right? I hear about this all the time. And that's why I began an online community away from the prying eyes of your company or your boss. And you can check it out here. Let me put up the QR code right there, and you can scan that and check out the community there. Okay. Now, the next segment is the top 5 stress signals. That's what we're covering next. The top 5 stress signals. So we're going to walk through the 5 most common stress signals I see in sales conversations, and more importantly, what they actually mean. So here are the signals. And signal number 1 is the blink rate spike. So this one, I find this one fascinating. When someone is processing stress or discomfort, did you know their blink rate increases? It actually increases. So notice that the next time you're talking to a prospect face to face or in Zoom, notice their blink rate and if it increases, because the average person blinks about 15 to 20 times per minute during a normal conversation. But when they're feeling pressure, stressed, or showing signs of anxiety, that blink rate will jump to 30, 40, even 50 blinks per minute. Isn't that fascinating? So now you're not going to sit there and stopwatch counting blinks. That's not what you're going to do. But if you pay attention, you can see when you move into a conversation, maybe closing time, that blink rate increases. You can start to notice suddenly that blink becomes more rapid after you mention price, or after you ask for a commitment, or when a certain topic comes up. So what does that mean? It means that they're processing stress or cognitive overload, too much information. Sometimes you just said something that triggered anxiety or uncertainty. Pay attention to what that was. Now, how are you going to respond when you notice this? Slow down. So you've hit a pressure point. So back off of the gas pedal. Try and say something like, I'm throwing a lot at you right now. What questions do you have so far? Or what part of this feels most important to you? Give them space to process and voice their real concern. Be patient during this time. Signal number 2 you want to notice is the tight-lipped smile. You know this one. You're talking to someone and they smile at you, but their lips are pressed together in a thin line like this. There's no teeth showing, no relaxation in their face. It's a smile, but it doesn't reach their eyes. It's just tight-lipped like this. This is what Chase Hughes calls a fake smile. And it's one of the most reliable indicators that someone is uncomfortable but trying to be polite. So what does this mean? It could mean, I'm not buying this, but I don't want to be rude. Or it could mean, I have an objection I'm not voicing. And so it becomes socially acceptable way of masking discomfort. Now, how do you respond? Well, don't ignore it. Just don't ignore it and keep pressing forward. That's going to make it worse. Instead, create a safe place for them to be honest. Try, I'm sensing some hesitation. What's on your mind? Or, it's totally okay if this isn't the right fit. What concerns do you have? Get it out in the open. Give them permission to say no or to voice their real objection. Ironically, this often moves the sale forward because they feel safe being honest with you. All right, barrier number 3, the arms crossed. All right, legs crossed, holding a purse or a laptop in front of their body, leaning back in their chairs. These are all barrier behaviors, okay? Now, if you're on a Zoom call, it may be hard for you to see the crossed legs. But here's the nuance. Not every crossed arm means they hate you. Could be they're cold, like me right now. And sometimes that's their comfortable position when they're talking. But what you're looking for is the change, okay? So they've been open, their arms are open, and then they seem to be relaxed, and then suddenly you mention something and they cross their arms or they lean back to create a barrier against something you said. That's your signal, okay? So what does it mean? Well, it mostly means that they're protecting themselves. They feel vulnerable. Or they feel threatened, and they become defensive or skeptical about something you just said. Okay. Now, how can you respond? You need to rebuild safety and rapport. So acknowledge their perspective first. I know this might sound too good to be true, or a lot of people feel skeptical about this at first, and that's totally fair if you feel that way. You can also mirror their body language briefly, then slowly open yours back up. So if they sit back like this, you might just gently cross your arms and just sit back a little bit and then open up again, because people subconsciously mirror those they trust. So you're creating a pattern of safety. And sometimes when I have done this, they have opened back up as well. Okay, signal number 4 is the vocal shift. This one is a sneaky one because we're often told to focus on what someone is saying that we miss how they're saying it. Okay, so we're so focused on what they're saying that we somehow miss how they're saying it. So listen for changes in pitch, pace, or volume. When someone is stressed, their voice often goes higher, gets faster, or becomes quieter. Sometimes they'll clear their throat repeatedly, or their voice gets strained. You might also hear more filler words like like, which indicates that they're searching for the right words or buying time because they're uncomfortable. Okay. I sometimes experience this in coaching sessions when maybe a client hasn't did everything that we had talked about he or she was going to do in the last coaching session. And now, I'm asking them if they did it. And sometimes their voice will go up, or they'll, like, and they're searching because they're feeling uncomfortable that they didn't do the work. So what it really means is they're experiencing internal conflict or anxiety, and their cognitive load is high. So how do you respond? Well, you match their energy first, then gradually slow down your own speaking pace. This has a calming effect. You can also validate their feelings by saying, I get this is a big decision, and I want to make sure you feel confident about it. What would help you feel more certain? Open that question up. All right, number 5 signal is the micro expressions. Now, these are rapid, involuntary facial expressions that flash across someone's face in less than a second, often before they have time to mask them with a more socially acceptable expression. You can see that flash. You might see a quick flash of disgust when you mention price, or a monetary look of fear or anxiety when you talk about implementation, or just a brief expression of contempt if they don't believe what you're saying. Oh, that one's a good one. What it means is this is their raw, unfiltered reaction before their social filter kicks in. It's the truth. They're flashing the truth of how they really feel in an expression on their face. So how do you respond? Well, you don't call them out on it. That will make them defensive. Instead, use it as information where their real objection lives, I should say. If you saw disgust at the price, that's your cue to pivot to value and the return on the investment. If you just saw fear, that's your cue to address risk and provide reinsurance. Okay, before we get into segment 3, we're going to take a quick 30-second break, and we'll be right back. Stay with me. If you like the Savvy Sales Lady Live, you're really going to like the Savvy Sales Lady newsletter. It's delivered in your inbox once a week. Why don't you go ahead and subscribe? The link is in the show notes below so you won't miss this upcoming newsletter. I give you one tip to focus on each week to implement immediately into your sales day. Why not sign up and learn just a little bit more? Okay, yeah, why not sign up and learn a little bit more? It's in the video description that you can go to after the podcast is over. All right, now let's go into segment 3, and that is the biggest mistake sellers make. All right, so now you know what to look for. Here's where most salespeople mess up, and they see the stress signal and they either ignore it completely and keep pushing forward, or they get defensive or take it personally, or they panic and start over explaining. And of course, none of these work. When you see a stress signal from a prospect, it's actually a gift. Your prospect is giving you real-time feedback about what's landing and what's not. They're showing you exactly where the objection lies, even if they can't articulate it yet. The biggest mistake is treating stress signals as obstacles to overcome rather than information to use. So your job isn't to convince someone who's showing you stress signals. Your job is to make them feel safe enough to tell you the truth about what's really going on. Like I said in the beginning, have you ever been on those sales calls where they're nodding their head, they're agreeing, they're asking questions, but at the end they don't buy? Or they've asked you all through the presentation questions, but then at the end they tell you, I need to think about it. You see, those are all the chances are there were a bunch of cues they were giving you all through that, and you didn't notice. Chase Hughes talks about this concept for validation needs. Every human has a deep need to feel understood, accepted, and validated. We all do. When your prospect is stressed, they're not feeling that. So your response should be to validate first, then problem solve. Instead of, no, you don't need to worry about that because A, B, and C, try this instead. And by the way, I have heard that recently from a sales rep. No, you don't really need to worry about that. That is not reassuring at all. What you want to do is say, that's a really valid concern. When you say, no, you don't need to worry about that, that's minimizing their concern. And you don't want to do that. So try, that's a really valid concern. A lot of my clients felt the same way initially. Can I share with you how they thought through it? And then give them examples. That's where storytelling, when you do your storytelling. See the difference? One creates resistance, the other creates partnership. All right. Now let's get into segment number 4, putting it into practice. So we want to make this practical. How do you actually use this in your next sales call conversations? Well, here's what we're going to do. Here are the steps. Create a baseline, watch for changes, pause and address, listen more than you talk. And let's go through this step by step. So the first one is create a baseline. At the beginning of every conversation, spend a few minutes just building rapport and getting to know your prospect. Watch how they naturally behave when they're relaxed. Do they gesture a lot? Are they still? In other words, do they sit still and listen intently? What's their normal blink rate, speaking pace, posture? All of those things you want to notice because they're cues. That's your baseline. This is what normal looks like for that prospect. Then step 2, you're going to watch for changes. As you move through the conversation, especially when you hit key moments, maybe talking about the investment or the pricing part, or asking for a commitment, or discussing implementation, watch for changes from their baseline. Did they just sit back and cross their arms when they were open before? Did their blink rate spike when you mentioned the timeline? Did they lean back when you asked them to sign? Those changes are your roadmap to their real objections. So step 3, pause and address. So when you see a stress signal, pause. Don't barrel forward. Create a space for them to share what's really going on. Some of my favorite phrases are, I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. What questions do you have? Or I might say, I notice you hesitated there. What's coming up for you? Or you seem like you're processing something. Want to talk it through? Or what would need to be true for this to feel like the right decision? And then step 4 is listen more than you talk. I know, easier said than done, but we need to do that because you're listening to understand. You're not listening to respond. Keep that in mind. You're listening to understand. This is where the sale is actually made. When they open up and share their real concerns, your job is to listen, validate, and then address it from a place of partnership. Remember, I've always said align with the prospect. So this comes from a place of partnership and alignment, not persuasion. Okay, let's go into segment 5, which is the ethical piece. We need to talk about this. So this is really important. Some of you may be thinking this feels a little manipulative, like I'm analyzing people and using it against them. And I want to be really clear. There's a huge difference between influence and manipulation. Manipulation isn't using these skills to get someone to do something that's not in their best interest so that you can benefit. That's manipulation. That's not what we're talking about here. Influence is using the skills to help someone make a decision that is in their best interest by understanding and addressing their real concerns. The question isn't whether you should pay attention to stress signals. Your prospect is sending them whether you notice it or not. And my guess is most people don't notice it. The question is, when you do notice it, what are you going to do with that information? Do you want them to continue to stress? or do you want to help them? Are you going to use it to push harder and close a sale they'll regret? Or are you going to use it to serve them better, address their real fears, and help them make a confident decision? That's the difference. And that's what makes you a savvy salesperson, not just someone who hits quota, but someone who genuinely helps people while building a sustainable business. Okay, your prospects are talking to you all the time through their words, through their body language, through their facial expressions, through their vocal shifts, and all those micro signals that most people miss. When you learn to read these stress signals, you can gain a superpower in sales. It will help you immensely. You can address objections before they become deal breakers. And for those of you that are jumping on, you can watch this entire replay at the end of the live stream when the live stream is over, so you can catch up, because this is information that's valuable for you to use to close deals and to work and align with prospects. So you can build trust faster knowing these cues, and you can help your prospect feel truly understood, because isn't that what Chase Hughes always says? People want to know that they are understood, that they're listened to. Remember, a stress signal isn't rejection. It's information. It's your prospect's way of saying, I need something from you right now. Maybe it's reassurance. Maybe it's clarity. Maybe it's validation, or maybe it's space. And they can't always articulate what it is. So your job is to notice, to pause, and respond with empathy and partnership. Remember, align with the prospect. So here's your homework this week. In your next 3 sales conversations, just observe. Don't try to do anything with it yet. Just practice noticing. Go back through this video, take notes. I've outlined what all of the signals are. I've outlined what the steps are. So watch for those blink rates. Do they spike? Watch for the barriers. Start building your change detection muscle. And if you want to dive deeper into this work, I highly recommend checking out Chase Hughes' material on behavioral analysis. It really is incredible stuff. And as always, if this episode resonated with you, would you please hit that like button and share it with a colleague that you think may need help, or subscribe to this YouTube channel, because I do live streams every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So until the next time, keep selling, keep serving, and keep being the savvy, successful salesperson that you're meant to be. And next week, if you join me, feel free to submit questions, and I'm happy to answer them live. While you got me, you might as well ask me questions. All right, I'll see you next Thursday, and be sure and subscribe and hit the like button. Bye-bye.